Are you looking for a game console that is the size of a TV remote, can play Nintendo DS games, and N64 games? Well, you're in luck. This is the Anbernic RG28XX, and this little pack of chewing gum is here to freshen up your gaming. Before we dive in, we're going to be giving away a teal Steam Deck at the end of May. All you need to do for a chance to win is subscribe, then check the community tab at the end of May to see who won. So this is the tiniest little emulator that I consider a fully playable option. There are others that are smaller, but this is the one that I think just meets just the bare minimums of hardware that anybody could pick it up and play. So let's take you through the device hardware and see how small it actually is. But first things first, we have a 2.83-inch IPS screen at 640 by 480 resolution, a 3100 milliamp hour battery, which is pretty large for this device, and we have colors that come in gray, beige white, black transparent, and lava orange. What else we have on the device are A, B, X, Y buttons, which are squishy and not clicky. We have a D-pad that's kind of tiny and squishy, not clicky. We have start and select buttons that are clicky and not squishy. On the left-hand side of the device, we have a volume rocker that is clicky and not squishy. On the right-hand side of the device, we have a power button and a reset switch that is clicky, not squishy. And on the top, we have all of the trigger buttons, which are clicky and not squishy, including the R1, R2, L1, and L2 buttons. We also have the menu button on the top, which is clicky and not squishy, in addition to some holes, which we have a USB-C charging and data port at the top, in addition to a micro, not macro, HDMI port. And on the bottom, we have a few more holes. We have the SD card for the OS and the SD card for the game reader, in addition to a headphone hole. And on the back, we have some holes, but nothing else. You can also see the triggers from the back and the Anbernic logo. But now onto the size of this device, which is around 5 inches by 2¼ inches, which is still very small, but makes it look intentional, and this definitely is lava orange. See, this thing is tiny, but this actually does have the same size D-pad as the Game Boy Advance. So, it's good. But what about those buttons? I understand why they went with this size, but even if they made it just a mil bigger, it would really make a difference when you're playing for a longer session. But I really do like how this package came out. This is a very tiny form factor, but it's cool because it could be in addition to something else because it takes up so little space. This is like half the size of a big battery bank, so it'll fit anywhere. With that being said, I do think we should take a look at the software because there are a few things that hold this device back from being fantastic right out of the box. This device is using a Linux-based operating system and is running Anbernic's front end that they set it up like these little cards here. They have these playrooms, which I don't recommend using. They use their settings that are kind of weird, but then they also have the RetroArch settings, which actually do work very well, and you can change with the menu button pretty easily. This will play any of your 8 and 16-bit consoles perfectly fine, all the way up to the Game Boy Advance. Game Boy and Game Boy Advance games run very well on this device, and with the size screen it has, is just big enough for everything to look super crisp. Now when we move up the scale of power here, we're going to talk about N64 next because this is not on it initially, but you can put it on this. And I do recommend putting this on this because I was able to get a lot of the games to run and didn't have any issues other than some audio crackling. Moving up a little more, we're going to talk about the Nintendo DS, which I think actually runs really well on this device if you're not using the touchscreen, because this does not have a touchscreen. So sticking to games like Advance Wars, Pokemon, or card games, you'll actually be able to have a great time with Nintendo DS emulation on here. Even the Mario Kart games run at full speed. Where this doesn't really make any sense to me is why they have included the PSP emulators, because the screen is just far too small for what it actually is. Now, it'll run some of the games, but it doesn't have a stick and doesn't really make sense to run PSP games on this device. But it has one glaring issue, which is you need to do the firmware update. If you do not do the firmware update, this will come out of the box not having all of the games be playable and none of the content all the way up to Nintendo DS be playable. They've done 4 patches so far, and I recommend using the highest one and go to Anbernic's website to get your full download of this and install it on the SD card, the OS SD card. Overall, if you're looking for something that is Nintendo DS and below for emulation, I think this is a fantastic tiny package. So the software really isn't where it should be right out of the box. After I did the update, though, this brings it back to where I was kind of expecting this to be based on the specs and the hardware that was announced. That being said, this all should have been there when I got it out of the box. Now, this was before the software update. It really wasn't up to snuff, and it really only meant to be a Game Boy Advance emulator, so that's really disappointing. So after I did the update, though, and added different games, ROMs, and emulators on the back end, this is at the power level of the MIU Mini Plus and the Anbernic RG28XX Plus, which is great. That's exactly where we wanted this to be, and where we hoping it was going to be right out of the box. So if you're getting this, absolutely you must do the system updates, because it really makes this device worth having. That also being said, this brings us to my thoughts on this console. And the first one is, I appreciate litnxt.com sending this over to us for a review. And if you'd like to purchase it, it is down in the description using their link. If you buy from them, I do get a kickback, so I appreciate the support. And while we're shilling out, if you'd like a stand, let me know in the comment section below, because I've been making these for a bunch of retro devices, and I'd like to know if anyone else would like them. They're called hollow stands, and it makes the device scene, not the stand. But my other thoughts on this device are, this is a cool, small, portable device that plays pretty much every game that I want to in a very tiny package. This thing would go great in a weekend bag that you can only plan on bringing like a small amount of items that you'd want to use. This can also be an addition to a larger device, something like the Steam Deck, and if you're like standing in line or something at the airport and just wanted to have something in your back pocket versus having a separate bag for your Steam Deck or something in your check luggage, that'd be great for playing in line while you wait. I really do dig this little tiny device, and it's definitely going to be going in the handheld emulator roundup that I'm going to do later this year, so subscribe if you'd like to be notified about that video when it goes up. If you missed any of those emulators that we've already reviewed, check them out here because they're free. They smell like aged cheddar, and if you haven't taken a look at either this emulator or this handheld, check these out because, you know, they go down like fine wine. Look at that cheddary goodness. That's all I got. Davey out.